Hello, good day to everyone. I am Chris Bolaños and I am welcoming you back to part 3 of our online discussion on reimagining the kingdom from a scripture standpoint. And the theme for this part 3 is we are appointed positions and roles in the kingdom. Let us start and contextualize first uh, from Zechariah 14:4. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall be cleft in the midst thereof, toward the east and toward the west. Now, from this chapter, from verse 4 onwards, we are quite sure that the context will be that Yeshua would have arrived on earth already after the second coming, and we would have met him on the clouds, and touched down first on a mountain in a desert, and there will be a parade of most probably a military campaign where he will destroy all his enemies first before uh, arriving on Mount of Olives. Okay, so the context will be at least from Zechariah 14:4 onwards is when Yeshua has already come back. Uh, from Zechariah 14, same chapter, it says on verse 16, "It shall come to pass that everyone that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, and to keep the Feast of Tabernacles." As you can see, there will be a continuation of keeping the feast days, and most probably it will not only be the Feast of Tabernacles but the rest of the 7 feast days, because Yeshua said he's going to be continuing the law or the implementation of the Sabbaths and the feast days, and of course the rest of the Torah. And he says he came to fulfill the law in such a way that he became the best example for us for keeping the commandments. So there will be no question that the Torah will still be in operation and it will be implemented in the millennial reign. And one of the evidence texts that we have is the Zechariah 14:16, in which even Egypt will keep the Feast of Tabernacles also. Egypt would be, according to the Hebrew mindset, one of um, or rather, Egypt is used as an illustration of all the other nations which are not yet in covenant with Messiah but will be grafted in probably if they decide to keep the Sabbaths and the feasts and come in covenant with Messiah. The traditional understanding of a kingdom would be that it will be composed of a king, subjects, the king's rules, or the constitution, no, and the territory as well. Now, there is a comparable sameness between this concept of kingdom and the kingdom of Messiah, the 1,000-year reign. However, the king will be the overall king of all will be Messiah and will be appointed roles in the kingdom. The subjects will be us and the rest of the world who will be coming into covenant with Messiah as well. The king's rules, of course, will still be based on the laws which were given by Yahweh, no, to Israel, which is based on the teachings of the Torah. And it will continue as we saw earlier in Messiah's reign. The territory, of course, which is according to Prophet Daniel, would be the kingdom will spread from Israel and beyond. So it will be the whole earth. Slowly but surely, it will cover the whole earth. So it will be a grand campaign. Uh, Also, as evidence that the law will still be in operation in Messiah's reign is Isaiah 2:3. wherein he says, "For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." And it might interest you to know that Micah 4:2 also says the same thing, wherein people from many nations will come and say, "Come, let us go up to the mount of the Lord." And then at the end of that verse, it says, "For the Lord's teaching will go out from Zion." Same thing which was declared in uh, Isaiah 2:3. His word shall go out from Jerusalem. And of course, you have here an interesting connection with the New Testament, especially in the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 19. "For whosoever shall break one of these least commandments shall teach men also, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven." So in other words, he will not have a position of prominence. Perhaps he will be a servant, or maybe just a part of the kingdom, but he will miss out on the greater promise of you being an appointed judge, perhaps, or having a position of prominence. Uh, it would be better, of course, if you would teach men the commandments. "Whosoever shall do and teach the commandments," it says here, "shall the same be called great in the kingdom of heaven." And who would not want to take advantage of that? In Luke 19, verses 12 to 27, I don't think I completed the slide, but at least 12 to 15 here. He said, "Therefore a nobleman went into a far country to receive for himself a kingdom and then returned. Calling 10 of his servants, he gave them 10 minas and said to them, 'Engage in business until I come.' But his citizens hated him and sent a delegation after him. 'We do not want this man to reign over us.' When he returned, having received the kingdom, he ordered these servants to whom he had given money to be called to him, that he might know what they had gained by doing business." Now, if you continue reading up to verse 27, the story goes on like this. So the first servant planted his seed. He invested on the 10 minas, or the 10 pounds according to the King James Version, and he produced 10 minas and 10 pounds uh, when he invested on the 10 pounds. The other servant invested 5, and in return he got 5 pounds. And then the last servant did not invest, but he was so fearful that he kept his pounds, and the only thing that he had, it was taken away from him and it was given to the first servant. Because, in fact, the king or the governor was not happy about him not being able to invest on whatever was given to him. So this is an illustration of Messiah when he ascended into heaven and he comes back, and he will of course question us according to how we invested in the business of continuing the business of his kingdom. Of course, it may come in the form of, did you invest your resources into expanding the kingdom? Maybe even physical resources, but more importantly, perhaps the business of teaching uh, in accordance to the laws of his kingdom. Because when he comes back, before he comes back, we are already, should be doing the business of teaching people, most importantly, not only the life, death, and resurrection of Messiah, but of course the message of the kingdom to come, which will come on earth. And the reason why many do not understand it fully, because they choose to ignore the entire message. Okay, so, but more importantly, uh, the message of that the law shall continue when he comes back, because that will be the official business. One of the most important activities that we will be doing in his kingdom is that since we are appointed small kings and judges in the kingdom, then we will still be teaching people and the nations about the laws of the kingdom. Because by then, the kingdom will be here on earth already. So the good news of the kingdom would have been fulfilled. So uh, what's left for us to do then, if not to, which is our business would be to go around and teach people all about the kingdom, especially the rules, the regulations, the instructions of the king. So, of course, we will have different roles. We will still have farming, we will still have fishing, and music, but the most learned, perhaps, about the laws of the kingdom will govern cities and nations, because we have invested so much into these matters about the kingdom. So we will be greatly rewarded with positions of leadership in that same kingdom. So we will govern cities and nations. We are given various roles according to what we may contribute, of course. But especially those, some of us will be appointed rulers and judges and ambassadors and teachers and administrators. Uh, Much like small kings, because in the Hebrew mindset, uh, judges, kings would be almost like priests in the kingdom. Also are looked upon as kings as well, maybe even small kings. And Messiah would be the King of Kings, Melech Hamlakim, right? So um, the role of kings in the history of Israel so far, even King David, is usually to become a master of the Torah and to teach that to his citizens. And I would just like to end this video by thanking the web sources or the websites where I got uh, the pictures, you know, which became the background of my slides right there. So that would end our discussion for now. Thank you very much for listening, and shalom. See you again next time.